Really good question. I tell you this, when it's your own money at stake, you pay more attention to it. I mean, honestly, man, the reason the hands-on angel thing came, and I say this to every founder I back,
Hmm.
and this, if you and I were having this conversation, I would say, Angela, I'm going to come into your round, but I'm only going to come in under the circumstances. I am going to come in, and my goal in life is to make you as wildly successful as possible by leveraging my network to introduce you to as many people as you can so you can be as successful as you've ever dreamed. If you don't want that kind of help, do not take my money. You're wasting my time. Don't take it because I will be your worst nightmare if you don't let me help you. I
Right.
tell every founder that. Now, most founders would be like, why wouldn't we want the help? That's what we want. Some founders are like, no, I just want you to write a check and get out of the way and leave me alone. I'm not their guy.
Hey Ramblers, before we start today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest episodes, interviews, and all things startup. This episode, like every episode before it and after it, is brought to you in part by OffSource, your affordable one-stop solution for outsourcing all of your office work. If you or your team are constantly waitlisting important tasks for any reason, you're doing your company a disservice. Get the support you need by outsourcing to OffSource tasks like HR support, admin, bookkeeping, social media, graphic design, web design, and so much more. You can go to the link in the description and visit offsource.tech. This is The Ramblings.
Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. As you know, I am your host, Angelo Roberts, and I, for one, am coming in a completely different space. You are the first people to know that we are partnering with Concorp, the lab, and we are now recording out of their phone lab today. We have with us joining Steve Walsh from Hands on Angel. He's an angel investor, a pretty good colleague and friend of Scott Callig. I hope I
Yep.
that right.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
So Scott's been on the Scott was on the pod a couple of weeks ago. It feels like almost a very, very long time ago. But introduce yourself, Steve. How are you doing? I feel like that was a really long intro. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, Angela, thank you for having me. And you're right, Scott is a great man and a good friend. I'm Steve Walsh. I run a company called Hands on Angel. And really what the Hands on Angel is, it's an ecosystem built around early stage founders and funders. I spend my day working with pre-seed and seed stage founders, and I help them really accelerate three things. I try to help them accelerate capital, revenue, and growth. And that's really where I spend my time.
And you guys know I absolutely love to have an angel investor or an investor of any kind on this particular pod, because as a startup ourselves, we love to get one, pointed advice for all of the startups in the community, but two, we get to have real life feedback on any of the things that we have going on. We're going to have some questions at you later, Steve, but first, let's get into who you are, why you do what you do, what got you into angel investing, what is Hands on Angel, the specific types of ventures that you back with.
Yeah.
Give us your little spiel. We love it.
My story started about 7 years ago. I left corporate life after a 25-year career as an executive, predominantly in the US broadband space. My claim to fame is I helped two of the largest broadband companies in the world, Cox Communications and Comcast, get out of the Stone Ages in the residential cable business and get into the B2B space, which was my background. I was an early employee at both. And at Cox, we built it from no customers and no revenue to about $1 billion in 7 years. And then the president of Cox.
So just to be sure, you were also one of the very first people to be at Cox.
At the business side, they had been a cable company for a while, but they really, in the early 2000s, had never done business to business. They had never sold to businesses. So a small group of us were hired to help them build that. And we built that from inception to about $1 billion. And then the president of Cox became the president of Comcast business because Comcast said, oh, we're 5 times the size. If they can do it, we can do it. And the president was smart. He brought a bunch of us over that had done it with him before. And the pitch was pretty simple. It's how would you like to do this at a company 5 times the size with unlimited capital? And I'm like, that sounds like fun. So I was one of the first employees in the group there. And in 10 years, we built that from no employees, no revenue, no customers into a $10 billion business. So that was a lot of fun. But, you know, I'm sure you can appreciate this, Angelo, like, no employees, no revenue, no customers, unlimited capital, a lot of fun. 10 billion in revenue, 100,000 employees, millions of customers, not as much fun anymore. I just get tired. Like I'd been there, done that. And what really tired me out was not just the work, it was having to do things someone else's way, like having to show up when and I was a vice president at a Fortune 10 company. So this wasn't like I was low man in the totem pole. I was at the top of my game, but I still was told when to show up, what to wear, how to act, who I could do business with. And I'm just like, after 25 years, I was like, you know something? I'm pulling the ripcord. So I did. And I really wasn't going to retire. I was like 46 at the time. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And I was a pretty big public market investor. And at that time, about 7 years ago, I really started to lean into alternative assets. I started with the traditional ones, art, wine, watches. I got the crypto bug. I was an early investor in Bitcoin. And then I was like, well, why the heck wouldn't I look at startups? Like, I have a long-term investment philosophy. I dollar cost average into diverse portfolios over long periods of time. I know how to build and scale businesses like nobody's business. I have capital and I have access to other capital because a lot of my friends are investors too. Why don't I just go see if I can help early stage founders, like that next generation of founder build businesses? So I literally would go to demo days, Y Combinator, Techstars. I'd meet a bunch of founders and I literally would be like, hi, I'm Steve Walsh. I'm here to help. What are you working on and how can I help? And then they would be like, help me raise capital, help me raise capital. And I'm like, well, to build a business, there's like 50 things that have to go well for this to work. Capital's like one. Why don't we assume I can raise you capital? And let's talk about where you really need help. What? And then they were like, oh, do you know any Delaware attorneys? Because we have to go make a C Corp and we've never done that before. I go, I know 5 of them. Steve, do you know anyone that does top of funnel marketing? Because we really have to go to market and have a good go-to-market plan. I'm like, great, here's 3 agencies. And every time they bring me a problem, I found myself saying yes. And with 1 or 2 phone calls to my network, getting them in front of the right people that can help them solve that problem. And I started to just meet a lot of founders and got really close with a couple. And they were like, hey man, you're really good at this. And I'm like, what am I really good at? They're like, well, we bring you business problems and you just make phone calls and emails and people come in like this army and just help us solve it. Like, that's not normal. Can you do more of that? And I'm like, sure, tell me more. And then I started to learn their business and I'm like, are you guys going to do a round? What if I helped you with that round? What if I went out and helped you raise that round and introduced you to a bunch of friends of mine? What if I helped you put your pitch deck together? And what if I helped you refine your business? And that was it. And I didn't think that was a business, by the way. I just said, let me just help you do these things. And then a couple of founders were like, yeah, we're talking to you like 5 times a week. We should like formalize this. You should come work with us. And I didn't want to work for anybody, Angelo. Like, I had that part of my life. So I actually blew it off. I was like, I don't want to work for anybody. And they were like, no. Like, be a consultant, help us do some stuff, invest in us. And I'm like, I didn't think that was a job. I was like, that's a job? They're like, well, it could be. And a couple of founders were like, they literally sent me emails like, we want to start working with you. We can't hire you full time, but we'll hire you to do like fractional work for us. Could you do it? Would you help us? And I'm like, sure. And I was like, well, we'll see where it goes. And 1 led to 2 and 2 led to 5. And then I started writing checks and investing in them. And then by like the 5th or 6th one, I went to my wife one day and I'm like, I'm working with like 6 companies and I'm helping them and I got clients and I'm investing. Like, this is a real business. I probably should go get a bank account and formalize this company. And then I started to do more of it and more investing. And I had like this, the hands-on approach where I was very hands-on and just trying to be as helpful as possible. And one day I was on a podcast just like this. And it was in Australia of all places. Don't ask me why, but it was Australia.
Listen, pod knows we love Australia. That's our favorite place. I spent 2 weeks doing like Sydney/Melbourne. Love it there.
So the guy was like, so let me get this straight, mate. You get really hands-on. You're like this hands-on angel with these founders. And my brother is an entrepreneur and he was listening to the podcast and he goes, that's it. That's the logo. That's who you are. That's your brand. That's everything. That's the company. And that's how Hands-On Angel was started like 7 years ago. And now, fast forward, I've worked with and invested in 64 early stage companies, all at the pre-seed seed level. 35 of them have gotten to Series A, which is a pretty good indication they're going to survive. 8 of them have exited to date. And the exits have been $15 million to $400 million. And those 64 companies have raised a combined $1.18 billion. So wow. It's been awesome.
We are working with a heavy hitter today, folks. So I have a very good question, especially for the founders out there. When you were transitioning, right, from working with companies that had a lot of capital to now
Yeah.
working and investing and being the capital that the companies needed, what was the advice that you gave them that differed from how you were doing things when you started up because you were working with, either very large amounts of capital from Cox or 5 times that budget from
That's a
Cox?
really good question.
What
Yeah.
how did what you do differ from the advice that you had to give the founders where they're now on a much more limited payroll? Things have to run a lot more lean, and they're working with your dollar versus you working with Comcast's.
Yeah, really good question. I tell you this, when it's your own money at stake, you pay more attention to it. I mean, honestly, man, the reason the hands-on angel thing came, and I say this to every founder I back,
Mhm.
and this, if you and I were having this conversation, I would say, Angela, I'm going to come into your round, but I'm only going to come in under the circumstances. I am going to come in, and my goal in life is to make you as wildly successful as possible by leveraging my network to introduce you to as many people as you can so you can be as successful as you've ever dreamed. If you don't want that kind of help, do not take my money. You're wasting my time. Don't take it, because I will be your worst nightmare if you don't let me help you. I
Right.
tell every founder that. Now, most founders would be like, why wouldn't we want the help? That's what we want. Some founders are like, no, I just want you to write a check and get out of the way and leave me alone. I'm not their guy. I'm not. That's not who I am. So the thing I did differently, one is I pay attention to the cash more because it's finite and it's mine. And the
Mhm.
second thing I do is I really coach these founders that you have to get to default alive. And what I mean by that is you have to get to the point where you can generate enough revenue to at least break even every month to keep the lights on. The sooner you realize that, the easier it will be to raise money, because if you're default alive, if it takes you 3 months to raise a round or 6 months or 2 months, it doesn't matter because you're not going out of business. If you're not default alive, I see this too often. Founders are like, we have to raise because we run out of money in 3 months. That's not what investors want to hear. Investors don't want to hear, I'm giving you the check and then you're going to burn through it in 90 days and be out of business. Nobody wants to write that check. What they want to write is a check for a company that says, our problem is while we're break even and we can stay afloat, we can't grow as fast as we want because we have too many opportunities over here. And if we just had a little capital, we could 10x our growth. That's what investors want to hear. And so what I try to coach them on is that the sooner you can get to default alive or at least break even, the more optionality you have on raising capital, because capital is a very finite thing. There's only so much of it, especially at the early stages. That's what's different.
Okay. So then in that same breath, what would you tell a founder who's funding it themselves? They're not necessarily at break even, but they're at a operational break even. So they might not be
Yeah.
able to handle payroll or additional payroll, but as
Yep.
long as they, as the sole, person, or even the 3 people that are running it are like, hey, we're not really taking salary like that. And that's what allows us to
Right.
be profitable, what we would call in this world ramen noodle profitability.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you, man.
What are your thoughts on going from ramen noodle profitability to now trying to actively grow and scale?
I think you got to figure out what that number looks like. What's the gap, right? What's the gap between ramen noodle profitability and actual true break even? Is that $5,000 a month, $25,000 a month? Like, how far is it away? And the one thing I don't see founders do enough of, Angelo, is they want to spend their time and energy trying to raise money from strangers to fill that gap versus spending time and energy and talking to customers to fill that gap.
I agree.
Like it is like I had a founder talk to me the other day, got some traction, like 10,000 a month, but they're not at that default alive yet. I go, well, what's the break even number? He's like about 18, 19,000. I go, okay, so you're like 8, 9,000 away. And I'm like, what's your average customer? And he told me. And I backed into it. And I'm like, so you need like 7 or 8 more customers at your current rate to get to break even. He goes, yeah. I go, then may I make a very bold statement? He goes, sure. I go, stop talking to me. Stop, because he was a stranger. I go, stop talking to me. In fact, stop talking to anybody that looks like me. The
Right.
only people you should be talking to is potential customers that are in your ICP, your ideal customer profile, who can buy your product, and go find 7 more of those, get to default alive, and then call me back. And I'll have as many conversations as you want. Because the time spent talking to me is wasted versus the time you should be spending talking to customers that can get you to break even tomorrow. Because when it comes to sales, you control the timing, you control how many people you talk to, you control your pricing. When you talk to investors, you control none of that. I can make a decision in an hour, a day, or a year, or never make a decision. I don't have to write a check. You can't force me to do anything. And you really can't incentivize me with a pricing structure because I have the money.
Right.
You have optionality when you do. So that would be my advice to them is figure out what that delta is, get laser focused on going to get as many customers as you need to fill that gap and focus your energies there. And then look to fundraise once you have that optionality and default alive. That's what I would say to them.
I told you guys this was going to be a powerhouse episode because we are getting hand-fed amazing gems right now for those companies that are raising and companies that are going through a lot of different things. Now, Steve, I want to kind of get to more about you a little bit, right? So
Sure.
You've been working with over 60, plus companies, right? What is the one thing that you have been seeing, especially post 2020, right? What are some of the things that you're seeing that gives you the green light in your head for this founder's got it? What is your definition of the it factor?
It's different for everybody because everyone has their own thesis. For me, honestly, one, a lot of this is gut feel because I'm going so early. But I tend to back founders, and this is coming from someone that looks like me, who is not underrepresented, right? And has had a very traditional life. I went to college. My parents worked really hard. I tend to back a lot of founders that don't look like me. And it doesn't just mean they might be women or they could be LGBTQ or they could be Black or they could be Latin. They've had a different path in life. And what I've realized in backing a number of them, and it's about a third of my portfolio, is that those founders that come from a different background, maybe they're an immigrant, they tend to have this grittiness about them, Angelo, and this it factor that you can't, it's almost like people say, I don't know it, but I'll know it when I see it. And that's what happens. Right. And I've got some founders that, I don't want to say they grew up in horrific circumstances, but let's call it not ideal circumstances. So I have founders that they're like, they moved their family to this country and they have 2 kids under 10. And they say things to me like, oh no, we can't fail because everything I have is on this. I have 2 founders in my portfolio that sold their house to fund their company for the first 2 years. They sold their house.
I love
and
that.
These weren't like 20-year-old. These were like mid-30s, wife and kids, sold the house. I have another founder that I was working with him on their fundraise. And I said, look, I love you. I love your product. I love your company. But we can't build $100 million company with you in Mexico City. Your dev team could stay there, but you got to get to the States and we got to raise some US investors and put this thing on steroids. And about a month later, he called me, and this is a true story. His name's Marco Benitez, and the name of his company is Rook. Fabulous company. Calls me and says, I talked to the wife. I sell the house. We moved from Mexico City. I moved to Miami. And I go, I'm sorry? He's like, I sell the house. I talked to my wife. We moved to Miami with the kids. And I go, when? He goes, 2 weeks. I'm like, wow, you're kidding
urgency too, moving with a sense of urgency.
And he was just like, you're right. We can't do this unless I do the right thing and I get this company to the States. And I'll tell you, which is a huge blessing to me, since then, we've raised $2.7 million. Their company just passed almost 100,000 users. They're growing incredibly fast. We have awesome people in their round that we put together for them. They're a Techstars alum. This company is fabulous, and he's an unbelievable founder. But that's an example of someone that had no plan B, and he believed in what he was doing so much. And when he did that, when he said he was going to do that, I said, I'll help you raise your entire round. I will. I'll personally help you raise the round. I came in the round myself. I got 6 of my friends to come in the round, bunch of funds we knew, and we got the round done. But when I saw that, Angelo, I was like, this is no longer about you've got a cool product and a cool company. I was like, this guy gets it. I have to be part of this. And now,
founder, not necessarily what they're doing, but you don't want to bet against it.
And after he moves, we raised the round. We did a party in Miami in December for him and his co-founders to celebrate the round with a bunch of investors I knew. And we went out to dinner, his wife, my wife, and I in Miami. And I talked to his wife a bunch over Zoom, but I never physically met her. And when we met, I said, I don't know if I'm supposed to give you a hug and say congratulations or to like get out of the way because you're going to hit me because I kind of feel like this might be my fault. And she was like, he makes his own decisions. This was the best decision for him and for us. And, I said to her, like, there's nothing I wouldn't do to help your husband. Nothing. Like, he put it all on the line to do this. He absolutely will be successful. And I'm going to make it my life's mission to help him. And we've just become the greatest of friends. And I think the world of him and his family and what they do. They're awesome.
We love stories like that. And those are the things that bring value, because someone listening right now is going to take this and then they're going to move. They're going to make a move that they didn't make before, that they've been kind of teetering on the line. And this conversation is going to give them that oomph. Now, for the people that are hearing this, that are in the States already, based on your logic, do you have a affinity to founders moving to founder-friendly cities like San Francisco, Miami, LA, New York, XYZ? So if they were in the middle of like a Nebraska or even a Connecticut, right? Like let's use like New England, right? Like Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, those areas. Well, Boston is pretty hub central, but the rest of New England seems to be a lot more quaint, older businesses, not necessarily the youthful startup hub of that we see in other areas. Would you recommend founders like that move to the New Yorks or the San Franciscos, or if they're in the States, that seems to be good enough?
I'll give you two answers to that question, if I may. The first is COVID changed everything. And the need to have to live in San Francisco or New York compared to now, most teams are distributed. I'd say 70% of my companies don't have a formal office. They use shared co-working space like a WeWork or a Work Bar in different cities. And that's how they do pods in different cities. They're getting talent from all over the world. So that's really accelerated. And some of the newer ecosystems like Chicago, Virginia, Atlanta, I'll call them these secondary ecosystems, have really started to blossom, which has been fabulous to see. Having said that, and I'm from Boston, you mentioned. Look, I've lived here my whole life. I love living here. It's a great place to raise kids. It's a fabulous place to go to school and some of the best healthcare in the world. The problem is it is an old school, Brahmin, slow ecosystem. And if you are an early stage, young tech founder, it's really hard to raise here. And what I will tell you is of my 64 portfolio companies, 3 are from Boston. In fact, 90% of my companies, and when I do raises for them, most of the time we're not raising money from Boston. We're raising it from the places you mentioned: Miami, Austin, Texas, New York, California. I would call it the more progressive, risk-tolerant, emerging, faster ecosystems. And it's not a slight on my city. I think this is one of the greatest cities in the world. It's just the speed at which it operates doesn't always align with the speed at which my founder needs to move, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm a founder myself. I'm from Connecticut. We are as slow can be.
Right. It's frustrating to the founder. It's frustrating to me trying to help that founder raise money. So what I'll say to the founder is, look, I'll introduce you to a few people in Boston. But the benefit of today is you can fundraise via Zoom. So I'm going to make introductions all over the place. I'm going to introduce you to my networks in Miami, Austin, Texas, LA, San Francisco, because that's where I'm raising most of the capital. Europe, I've opened up Europe now. I have a bunch of investors. We do business in Europe. I'm doing some stuff in APAC, Asia Pacific. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. Those cities you mentioned are fabulous. There are some, from a founder perspective, I hate to say it, there are some unbelievable tax benefits there, which forces founders to move their company. I've had 5 founders in the last 12 months move to either Miami or Austin, Texas from California purely because of taxes.
Right.
They're like, we live in a state that hates capitalism, hates founders, and taxes the crap out of us. Why are we here? Why don't we just move? And I don't disagree with them. I get it. Massachusetts, Connecticut, super high tax states, super high.
Agreed. I want to kind of get back into your past a bit. You mentioned that you were building companies, you've been things ground zero. Let's go back even further. How did you even get into investing? How did you get into the idea of wanting to be in business? Was this something that you went to school for? Was this like I always knew what I wanted to do, or did by some miracle this something fell on your lap and it took you in a different path and you ended up here? What was your path into this?
So there was the business side and then there was the investing side. The business side was pretty easy. I was supposed to be a lawyer. I went to college for poli-sci. I went to UMass Amherst. I went to college for political science. And what most law schools want to see is 2 to 3 years work experience before you go to law school. The average law school student's like late 20s. So I did an internship for Congressman Joe Kennedy, the son of the presidential candidate. Realized that nobody makes any money in politics and they work 80 hours a week. And then I'm like, okay, I got to go get a job for like 3 years before I can go to law school, 2-3 years. So I went and got a sales job and started selling copy machines in downtown Boston, working for Herb Chambers, the car guy.
Right.
So, which you know from Connecticut. So prior to being a car billionaire, Herb made his money in copy machines. He had a company called A Copy in the 80s. He started it in Connecticut out of the back of a barbershop, and he ended up selling it for like a couple of $1 billion to a company about 10 years later. I worked for Herb. And then when Herb sold it, one of the agreements was he couldn't stay in the copier business and he wasn't going to retire. So he's like, what am I going to do now? And that's how he got into the car business. And he's now the largest private car dealer in the world. So I did that for 3 years. I had a lot of success. I was making more money than my father was making. And can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool. And then after 3 years, my father was like, all right, time to go to law school. And I'm like, why? I'm making like more money than you. I'm like making more money than all my friends. I'm driving a sports car. I'm wearing $1,000 suits. Like, what am I doing? Oh, and I have a few friends that went to law school and a cousin, and they were working like 80 hours a week, making half of what I was making. I'm like, why the hell would I go to law school? I'm in business, man. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
So that's how the business career started. The investing stuff honestly started because at a very young age, my parents worked incredibly hard. My dad was a principal of an elementary school. My mom was a secretary, and they worked incredibly hard to give my brother and I a life that they never had. But I also knew that they didn't make a lot of money. And I remember growing up, they didn't have any money to invest because everything was put into us and the house. And I remember a story where my parents would sit at the kitchen table on Sundays and spread all the bills out on the table, and they would shuffle the bills back and forth. And I knew what they were doing. They were deciding which ones we can afford to pay and which ones we can't. And it was because they didn't have the resources and the financial acumen on the investment side. So when I was 18 years old, I started investing. And I started to learn about the public and private markets, the stock market, and I bought my first stock when I was 18. And I started literally getting into a hat. GE.
Very good.
General Electric. Jack Welch, Connecticut company. Jack Welch ran it back then. I bought GE, then I took sort of the Warren Buffett philosophy. I took companies I knew or used their products. Disney, Coca-Cola, like great companies, great products. And I started a dollar cost average into stocks. And I got into this habit of saving 20 to 30% of my income at like 20 years old. If I made $100, I'd take $20 to $30 of it and I just put it over here for a rainy day and invest it. And I can't tell you, to this day, my ability to own multiple homes and cars and travel the world is all predicated on the fact that I learned at an early age, if you can figure out how to save a third of your income, the world will be your oyster for credit, for buying things, for anything you want in life. It just will. And it doesn't matter how much you make. I was saving 30% of my income when I was making $30,000, and I was saving 30% of my income when I was making $300,000. It doesn't matter how much money you make, but it was the habit and the discipline I got into at a very early age, and I really fell in love with investing. I fell in love with the fact that I could take $1, put it in this vehicle, and over the next 5 or 10 years, it could double or triple or quadruple. I don't have to do anything about it except just let it sit there and be patient. And then I started to get into other types of investments: real estate, stocks, real estate, bonds, wine, art, crypto. And I realized that a lot of them did not correlate because stock market doesn't behave like real estate. That doesn't behave like wine. Wine doesn't behave like art. So I could diversify and protect myself against recession and down markets because I had so many different investment in different types of things. Startups just became another type of investment to me. I looked at it the same way. I'm like, all I'm doing is dollar cost averaging into a diverse portfolio, no different than having a stock portfolio. These are just private companies. So I looked at it and took that same rigor and discipline. So that's how I made the business and then the investment sort of path for me.
That is absolutely amazing. Like the way that it was different. Now you mentioned having like the crypto, the alternative investments. I've looked at those things, haven't kind of gotten into it. What is your thoughts on wine? Like, how did you get into the alternative side of investing? Because a lot of traditional investors, they deal with stocks, bonds, ETFs, even startups.
Yep.
But alternative investing is really more of a younger, new investing kind of strategy for a lot of people, except for art. Art's been around for a very long time, but getting into like the crypto, the wine. I know that there are some people getting into like NFTs and getting into the trading card collections like Pokemon, baseball cards, it's like that. I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. So he talks about
I was just saying he's got V friends.
Right. He's got VFrench, right? Getting into those different kinds of alternative avenues. One was it a pure divestment kind of thing, or was it out of interest? And these are things that you do, taking the Warren Buffett strategy. Okay, well, I like wine. I invest in a wine company. Why not also invest in the collection of wine or things of that nature?
Awesome question.
About?
A little bit of both. Like on the wine, wine's a great example. I love wine. My wife loves wine. We collect wine. We love to drink wine. We're foodies. I'm a chef, so I cook. And I was like, well, crap, we do so much with wine. And then I started to research wine and found out it was a great investment vehicle and actually would outperform the Dow most years. So I'm going, well, if I'm betting on stocks and wine's just as good as stocks, but it's not correlated, why wouldn't I invest in that too? And then the last couple of years, there's been all these platforms that have been developed. So because wine, the problem with wine is you got to store it, you got to insure it, you have to climate control it. Well, now there are platforms out there, some of which are startups I've invested in, like VinoVest or Vint, that will actually, you could give them $1,000, tell them what your risk tolerance is. They will buy the wine for you. They'll insure it. They'll store it. They'll ship it to you if you want to drink it. But think of it as like a hedge fund for wine. So I not only backed those startups as an investor, I also used the platform to invest in wine futures now. Art, it has been around a long time, but the problem with art is no one has 2.5 or 5. Most people don't have $5 million to go buy a Monet or Picasso or a Banksy, right? But 5 years ago, a company called Masterworks comes along. Masterworks is a startup that goes and buys high-end wine, high-end art, Picasso, Monet, Andy Warhol, Banksy. They securitize it and they sell it like a stock. So I'm a Masterworks client and I own pieces, not the whole thing, but I own pieces of 2 Picassos, 2 Monets, 2 Warhols, a couple of Banskys, like all these world-class art, but I'm buying it at $1,000 share blocks, just like a stock, and it behaves differently than stocks. And they hold them for a couple of years, then they sell them at auction, and they give you the proceeds. So the ability to buy new asset classes like wine, art, and crypto in an easy online way didn't exist 10 years ago. It now does. So it's not only my interest to diversify, it's the fact that now it's incredibly easy to do that through platforms like this.
Okay. So would you say that you're a fan of these, I don't want to call them microtransactions, but like fractional ownership? Like, is that something that you're big into for smaller investors, people that are just starting out, people that are similar mindset as you in their early 20s, looking to get started in investing? Is that where you'd say that you'd recommend putting like your early dollars?
I think diversification is key. I do like the fractionalization of things. And if you're a collector, you can do things like Rally Road and buy cars or farmland, like watches. I love the fact that these microtransactions, as you call them, allow me to diversify in ways at small dollar amounts that you haven't been able to. For example, you don't have to have millions of dollars to buy Bitcoin. You can buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. You can buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin. And you can do it with a touch of a button in about a second. I can transfer that Bitcoin to anyone in the world in seconds. So I love stuff like that, stuff that I can do. And it doesn't really, you don't have to worry about, well, I don't have $1 million. I only have $10 to invest. I tell this to my kids. I have a 17 and 23-year-old son. I'm like, you can invest $5 now. But if you do it every month or every week consistently, your dollar cost average over time, it builds up. That's the key, man. The key is starting. It just is. The key is most people want to wait until they can afford to invest. I would argue that's a very bad strategy.
Listen, I am absolutely enjoying everything that you're going into. I want to take a step back from the technicalities, get into more interest-based kind of things. You mentioned that you're a foodie. You mentioned that you love wine. What are some of your favorite wines? Are you a red drinker, a white drinker? And what do you like to pair with what foods? Like, what's your diet consist of, and what do you like to pair with some of those things that you're eating?
Reds and whites, I do both. Depends upon time of year. So in the summertime, we'll drink more whites, just a little lighter, especially because in the summertime we'll eat a lot more seafood, lighter stuff, maybe grilled pizza, and whites go really well with seafood. Chardonnay specifically, Chardonnay and Riesling. I love like a buttery Chardonnay. My favorite Chardonnay is
Never
cake
heard
bread.
that term before. Buttery. I've never heard the term buttery be described for wine. What is that? What does that taste like?
Yeah, it's like a very smooth, silky taste. Uh, Chardonnays, which we like to drink, are usually either considered buttery or oaky. Oaky is more like smoky and wood taste. Buttery is more the fruit forward, I would call it, and
Okay.
smooth. So like for Chardonnays, cake bread is one of my favorite Chardonnays. They have a regular one and a reserve. It's fabulous. I've actually been to the Cake Bread Vineyard in Napa Valley. For reds, we love cabs. I like everything from Silver Oak to Nickel and Nickel to Staglin to Plump Jack, Faust. There's a lot of great reds out there, a lot, but mostly Cabernets. Orange Swift. I love Orange Swift's wines. And with reds, I'm eating steak, chicken, red sauce. I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands when I cook. So I'll do a lot of reds if we're having Italian. Those are probably my go-tos on the wine side.
Okay. Anything, if I wanted to go right now, right? Like if I was to go pick up a wine right now at most wine stores, what would be your recommendation? What would you say? This is what is a very consistent brand. They do this very good every year. And if you wanted to hold it, it ages well in value and in taste.
And like, you don't want to break the bank. Everyone thinks you need to spend $1,000 on a bottle of wine. That's not true. In fact, most of the wine in this country is sold under $20, about 90% of it. But for my money, if I was saying what's a really good Cabernet or a blend that's under $100 and super consistent, the Prisoner Wine Company. You can get a Cabernet for them for under $50, like $42. It's fabulous. You could drink it every day. Punch Wine Company, Punch, like the boxer.
Mm-hmm.
Like a $40 price point. I would put that cab up against most $100 price point wines all day long. Orange Swift has a bunch that are in like the $60, $70 price point range, which are fabulous. Once you get into maybe that $100 price point, the ones I would drink, Silver Oak, Nickel and Nickel, Plump Jack, those are all in that sort of $100 to $120 price point. They age really well. You can store them over time. And then once you get above that, now you're getting into like Scarecrow Etain, Screaming Eagle. Those are big time bottles. Like they can go $500 to $1,000 a bottle. Like I've got a couple bottles of Scarecrow Etain that 3 or 4 years ago were selling for $150. Now they're selling for $300, $400. I just won't let my wife drink them.
But man, it seems like you have had a complete and full career, right? You've done working for somebody else. You've been able to work for yourself. You're investing now. What has been your favorite era, right? You've done all different kinds of things. What was one 18-month period where you felt you crushed it so hard that that's like your highlight, that you're gonna pass down to everybody?
This is going to sound cliche. I appreciate the question. It's right now. And I've done a lot of stuff in my career that I'm proud of, but I am having more fun than I've ever had in my life right now. I am only working with people that I truly care about, doing things that I really care about, having a massive impact, and I'm doing it on my own terms. Like, I'll just give you like some stupid examples, but they're super important to me. I haven't done a meeting before 10 a.m. in 7 years. I refuse to. Why? Because from 7 to 9 a.m. every day I'm in the gym. Because about 10 years ago, I made a decision that health and wellness was going to be at the forefront of everything I did. Because if I wasn't healthy, I couldn't be the best husband to my wife. I couldn't be the best father to my sons. And I couldn't be the best for my founders and funders. So what the hell am I doing? So I start every day with intention in the gym from 7 to 9. So I refuse to do a meeting before 10 o'clock. And if people ping me and they say, can we do a 9 o'clock meeting? I go, no. They're like, why? I'm like, I'm in the gym. They're like, no, really, why can't we do it? I go, no, really, that's why. I don't make time for anything outside of those hours. It's very intentional. I haven't worn a shirt and tie in 7 years. I don't own any suits anymore. Threw them all out. I don't care. I'm going to wear whatever I want.
Is that like a you thing, or do you find that there is a value in people that are at certain stages wearing and dressing certain ways?
I think I wanted to show up the way I want to show up. I say it all the time, Angelo. People either get me or they don't, but I got my tribe and my tribe loves me. And if they don't, they're not part of my tribe. That's fine. Like, you got to, I say to my founders all the time, the key in life is you got to find your tribe. Once you do, nothing else matters. Like, if I'm not, and I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm completely fine with that, but I have so many people that that's where I put my focus. And once you get to that point in life, I don't know, life's pretty easy. And I'm really fortunate in that I'm having a tremendous amount of fun, not because I'm winning, but because my founders are winning. Like, to see my founders succeed and to see them exit and to see them win is everything to me. And when you make your life, I'll call it intentional, and that your intention is about helping others, I don't know, the world's kind of your oyster. And I get to do it on my own terms and wherever I want. We travel a lot. We have a son on the West Coast, so we travel a lot between the coast, and my wife works remote too. So it's great that, I mean, we were in Fort Lauderdale 2 weeks ago. We've worked from Europe. We work with California, Aruba, doesn't matter. So I'm having more fun now than I've ever had. I'm working harder than I ever had. Like, everybody thinks that this is easy. It's not. I'm working more hours than I ever have, but it's because I love doing it and I want to help more people. That's really what drives it. I hope that's helpful.
Absolutely. Listen, we love hearing your particular story. Everyone's going to have different, feelings and things that drive them and bring importance to them.
Yeah.
This is more important to me. This is selfish to me. I kind of just wanted them to hear this. Steve Walsh is one of JCal's initial first 1,000 investors in his syndicates. Talk to us about that. Like, I'm sure a lot of the audience are big JCal fans. Talk to us about what it's like to even be able to communicate with him.
Yeah, so I was one of the first 1,000 members of his launch syndicate. When I got into this 7 or 8 years ago, he was really just starting to become big. He wasn't like the all-in Jason everybody knows now. He's on CNBC every other day. But he had his syndicate had about 1,000 members. He had just written his book called Angel, which is really about his journey in angel investing and how to do it his way. Like me, I saw a lot of similarities. Jason's from the Northeast, like me. He went to a state school like I did. Parents were blue collar. He really didn't grow up he didn't grow up in Silicon Valley. He didn't grow up in this industry. He sort of had to fight his way in. So I saw a lot of similarities. And then when I read his book, which now I've read at this point probably 7 or 8 times, it was really just about treating people the way they want to be treated, being candid and honest with them, and trying to bring as much value to the table as you could right away. And I took that to heart. And when I first got into this, I didn't know anything. And I reached out to Jason and I was just like, I'm this business guy, had a lot of success, but I want to do angel investing and I don't want to screw it up and I don't want anyone to get hurt. And he was literally like, read my book, watch me on CNBC. Here's my podcast, This Week in Startups. So I did. And then I started to ping some of his friends, people that had done investing with Jason, guys like Gil Pacina, who founded Flight VC, which is one of the best angel syndicates in the world. Gil's an alumni from UMass Amherst like I am. So I reached out to Gil and he's like, great, what do you want to know? So I asked questions and he was nice enough to give me time. And I did the same thing with like Zach Callias from Callias Capital. And I just reached out to a bunch of investors that were much further along and gave him that same talk. And I was blown away at the humility and honesty and help that these people were willing to give me. And they were like, here's how you do it. And in Jason's case, it was his book and his podcast. Other people were like, here are some people on social you should follow. Here's some videos. Here's some books. And I just started to piece it all together, started doing investments, because when you're part of a syndicate, you can write small checks, minimum's $1,000. Some people write $10, $50, $100,000 checks, but I'm like, Jason's book talked about small bets, diverse portfolio, and start learning, and just reps at the plate, almost like a ball player. And that's what I started doing. And 1 led to 2, and 2 led to 5. And then I learned how, through Jason, to read a deal memo, to evaluate a company. And then I would sit on the Zoom calls and watch them pitch Jason and watch him give feedback. And then I backed some companies that Jason backed, and I got to meet the founders and what was it like for them to go through his launch syndicate. And I started advising some founders and helping them. And it just developed this cadence that one day I got invited to the Slack group because I had like 22 investments with Jason. And he said he was launching this, he called it the super secret Slack channel for his top 100 investors in his syndicate. So it was like his top 10%. And I was in it. So then I was at a Slack channel where you could send him messages and you'd see everybody sending messages, and he would respond himself, and he would respond really quickly. Like, you'd send him a message 10 minutes later, your Slack. I'm like, he got back to me. Isn't this guy on CNBC an hour ago? And he was pretty genuine. He was really cool. And now it's blown up, and now he's got All In, and he's doing the wine summits, and like he's on his 4th or 5th fund, couple $100 million fund. He's big time now. And what happens in this business over time is your deal flow just gets so good, you develop your own deal flow. And I don't want to say I don't need to invest with Jason anymore, but I have such my own deal flow now, and his deals are so hard to get in. I don't spend as much time there, but I still follow him religiously. I watch All In every single week. It's like must-see TV for me, because I love the fact that you could not find 4 more different people than those 4 guys,
right,
who have different beliefs on everything, including politics, religion, but they have a couple common things. They love poker, they love investing, and honestly, Angelo, they love each other.
right.
And I think it's a really good lesson for what's going on in the world of how things should be. And I think that's why they have blown up, is because people are looking at this going, they don't agree on almost anything, but they agree on those 3 core things, which is they love poker, investing, and they love one another.
I agree with that. Okay, we have asked you and talked about a lot of different things, Steve. I don't want to take up too much time. We're limited.
No problem.
But I don't usually ask this question, but I feel like I'd like to ask you. What are some things, what's a question that I didn't ask you that you would like to answer?
What is a question that you didn't ask me? What's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
What is the most exciting thing that you're working on right now?
So it's something very personal to me. It's taken a year. I figured it out one day because I'm retentive. I have had 3,000 conversations with early stage founders in the last 7 years, because I meet with like 15, 20 a week, 52 weeks in a year. You do the math, it's like 3,000 conversations. And what I realized really early on was that this industry in general is very much not transparent. Like, and everybody's like lying to one another. Like, the founders aren't telling the investors all the truth about their traction and who's in the round. The investors aren't telling the founders the truth that, your deck really isn't as good as you think it is. You're not talking to the right people. You don't have the right metrics, the right traction. And everybody's lying to everybody. And I come along, like tiptoeing along, and I'm like the opposite. I call myself a contrarian investor. I'm like the super candid guy. I'm the North, you'll know this, Angelo. You're from the Northeast. I have that Northeast mentality, which is,
right,
if you stink, I'm going to tell you stink. Like, it's just, if your deck stinks, I'm not going to tell you it's good. I'm going to say, the deck really isn't good. If you're not talking to the right people, I'm going to tell you that. But I'm going to tell you why that's important. And what I realized, founders would say this, Steve, why doesn't anybody do this? Because if you did that, I would change how I approach funders. I would change my deck and make it to the point where I present myself better to you. And I heard this thousands and thousands of times. And I'm like, why don't I just do something about this? So I went to my 64 portfolio founders and I picked 40 of them. And I did what I coach my founders to do when it comes to building something. I went to my target audience, who I knew they were early stage founders, and I did a Zoom call like this, and I asked one question. I said, Angelo, I'm going to take 30 minutes, and all I want you to do is answer this question. Tell me everything you hate about the fundraising process from beginning to end. And I just hit record, and I shut up. And I did 40 of those. And I took all those videos, and I figured out all the areas of frustration for founders, and I went and built a digital course around it to solve for it. And it's called the Funding Accelerator, and it launches next week. And I've got 300 founders on a wait list right now, waiting for it to launch. And it's my gift to a community that has given a ton to me. I think it helps and answers some of the most hardest questions that founders have. And the biggest thing for me is I wanted to figure out a way to go from helping a couple of hundred founders a year through the courses, through the talks that I give, to how do I split myself and help a couple thousand around the world? And this was a way to do it. So it launches next week. I'm super proud of it.
How can we get more founders on that list?
I will put this link in the chat right here for you, which you can share as part of the podcast. So that's the landing page for it. Anyone's welcome to go there.
All right. So you guys heard it here first. Well, all of you heard it here first, I guess, technically, but go to the link I'm going to put in the description. If you're on YouTube or like social media, it's going to be in the bio. We want to make sure that we get more founders this resource that Steve is launching. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing. And not only that, but this conversation filled with that. I'm going to listen to this conversation back. I try not to listen to the actual podcast episodes. Fear of like, I don't want to touch on it too much, because then I'll want to change things. I want to like edit. I want to do all of these different things. Like, let's just send it out. But this one, I think that there's a lot of value. I'm going to bring it back. Steve, me and you have to have a one-on-one kind of conversation. I'd love to kind of chat with you like on the side and everything like that. But the Ramblers, this has been another amazing episode with Steve. Steve, before you go, let us know where we can find you on social media so that you can catch a couple of follows or people jumping on the next projects that you do.
It's easy. LinkedIn, I'm the Hands-On Angel on LinkedIn, and my website is handsonangel.com. Either of those two places you can grab attention with me.
All right. And as all of you guys know, it will be in the link will be in the bio. It will be in the description. Look forward to talking to all of you later. See you next week.